What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Wednesday, December 14th, 2016 here, and we have got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And getting right on into the news here, there is at this point little doubt. There is a coup d'etat going on in this country to get Donald Trump out of the White House, to put Hillary Clinton in, and that is the perfect name for it. It is a coup d'etat. Donald Trump won the election by the rules everybody agreed to play by going on in, and now there's an organized, wide-ranging conspiracy, and that is the perfect word, to find some way to turn this around. And I'm not the only person who's saying that. Article out of Stephen Lenman's website, anti-Trump coup attempt underway here, and basically just talking about how ridiculously out of control and disgraceful this entire situation has become. Now, to get into some of the specifics, out in Colorado, as you know, they have the Hamilton electors, and apparently they chose the name because of the Broadway play where the cast booed Vice President-elect Mike Pence. It's not getting a lot of traction here on the net because most people understand Alexander Hamilton was one of the private central bankers' agents trying to get the U.S. on the debt hook to those European central banks, which led to a lot of friction, and it was part of the tensions that eventually led to the duel with Aaron Burr here. And so these Hamilton electors, and even though Colorado went to Hillary, these electors went to the judge and said, we want a ruling that says we can vote our own conscience in the Electoral College. And I think they were doing this to set a legal precedent that could then be taken to other states, where Hillary's people could go on into the Trump states and say, well, see, in Colorado, the judge just said, you can unbind all these delegates. That failed at the state level. They took it to a federal court. The federal judge just ruled it down and said, this looks like a political stunt. And he's right. That's exactly what this is here. Now, everybody is talking about all these Electoral College members are calling for a full intelligence briefing on how Russia stole the election from Hillary Clinton. And they're still pushing this nonsense. And it began with a letter signed by 10 electors demanding the truth come out before they meet next Monday. So I guess the idea is they can accept their bribe money with a clear conscience. Wow, look at that new home you've got there. Yeah, boy, don't you feel bad voting against your state voters? No. Trump was a Russian stooge here, and my conscience is clear here. Now, the good news on all of this, all of these people demanding the intelligence briefing are all Hillary electors anyway. They're going to vote for her anyway. This does not represent a significant change to the Electoral College makeup. What they're trying to do is find some way to convince the Republicans to change their votes. And I don't think they're going to get a lot of traction on this. And they're out there pushing, Trump is a Russian stooge, he's under foreign influence. Well, let's talk about foreign influence with Hillary Clinton. All that money that poured into the Clinton Foundation from all these governments around the world, they didn't do that because they like her, because they think she's a snappy dresser. And they have the hots for blondes. They did it in the expectation of favors, of influence. And even the documents leaked from within the Clinton campaign were showing these communications. These people are pouring this money into the Clinton Foundation in the expectation of access to then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. So this idea that Trump is a stooge, and Russian stooge, and they're going to incredible lengths about, this friend of Trump got some kind of an award from over there in Russia, and one of the people on his staff actually did some paid work for Russia, and say, see, that it really is nonsense. And you need to wake up here. It isn't Russia that was trying to rig our election. It was the Central Intelligence Agency. They blew it, and now they're trying to make up for their error by coming out with this claim that Russia hacked the elections somehow, even though there's no proof of it whatsoever. And as I mentioned yesterday, the CIA isn't doing this because they love Hillary Clinton. It's because Hillary Clinton has the evidence of the CIA being a major smuggler of cocaine into this country to sell to your children, going all the way back to Operation Screwworm in Arkansas under then-Governor Bill Clinton in the 1980s. Now, Martin Armstrong is out there slamming the CIA, saying this whole nonsense. It's really nonsense. It really is. And okay, so we're going to take a second here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just rejoining the network. Basically, what the Central Intelligence Agency has done, they are claiming on the basis of a single anonymous source to know that Russia hacked the election. Now, all of the election officials in all of the states are saying there's no evidence this happened. So they're trying to slowly morph this back to Russia hacked the DNC emails. And this is the reason Hillary lost. So it's still Russia interfering with our elections. This from the CIA, which has a huge record of tampering in other nations' elections process and overthrowing other nations. And they're out there saying, yeah, you know, it's okay for us to do this to other countries, but don't you dare do it to us. Stunning hypocrisy. And, of course, Julian Assange is saying that the DNC emails were not a hack. They were a leak. Even the DNC said there was no evidence of a hack. It was an internal leak. In all probability, Seth Rich, for which he was murdered. And, yeah, it's nuts. Judge Napolitano is out there saying that he thinks somebody in U.S. intelligence was behind this, maybe somebody at the NSA. But in either case, it's got nothing to do with Russia. There are a lot of people very, very concerned about what's going on here, both because of Hillary's and Bill Clinton's long history of crime and corruption, the damage to our country, and the damage to our reputation around the globe from all this nonsense related to this soft coup d'etat, as it were. So, story coming out of Zero Hedge, from fake news to fake intelligence, where they're out there, we have intelligence that Russia hacked it, and it's a circumstantial case, again, based on this anonymous source and this report to Congress, which now the CIA says there actually wasn't any report. So we don't even know where this actually began with. And it's not like the CIA is a trustworthy source. I mean, they've been caught lying about so many things throughout history. Nobody should take anything they say at face value. And interestingly enough, Caitlin Johnston, in an article in Newslog, came on out saying, believing something the CIA says is like trusting a meth addict with your car. And trusting the CIA when they're working with the Washington Post is like trusting a meth addict with your car, leaving your kid in the back seat, and giving them the house keys and money for Taco Bell. And that's absolutely right. Now, you need to remember that NSA, FBI, and the Director of National Intelligence are saying there is nothing to this story. It's another fake story from the Washington Compost, just like that one a week ago about how everybody out here in the independent media is part of Russia's propaganda network. And they had to sort of back away from it and say, well, maybe we're not sure. You know, we relied on an unimpeachable source at an anonymous website. All right, let's take a phone call. Sal in Colorado. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha. I would like to bring up a change to the Electoral College, which I think would be better than what we currently have. Instead of it being by state and giving them so many electoral votes, do it by county throughout the country.
A lot of people have suggested that. We had a caller yesterday who suggested do it by congressional district, which I have a problem with because of all the gerrymandering that's going on already.
Yeah, that may be a little wild. But I was seeing by county, one vote for whoever wins the county.
Well, certainly by that, Trump, going by that criteria, Trump scored a landslide because he took most of the counties. Hillary's entire election success, the place where she got all the votes, was the state of California, which is loaded with illegal immigrants, and all of these sanctuary cities, which are loaded with refugees and illegal immigrants. And we know that illegals voting in this election was a major epidemic across this country. I'll tell you something that I'm asking right now here. Up in Michigan, even though the recount is called off, the state of Michigan is investigating their election because the recount uncovered massive pro-Hillary election fraud all across the state in that presidential election. Why aren't the other states mounting investigations right now to look for election fraud? Or are they all going to do like that judge in San Diego did who said, well, yeah, something was going on, but once it's certified, there's no remedy, and we're just going to look the other way over here.
Yeah, there should be an investigation in all the states. And the computers should not be used.
They have to go. Not only the computers, the tabulation centers. We don't need them. I wrote an article, I've been posting it all over social media, on how to have a much more trustworthy election system, and it's by crowdsourcing the election process, where the ballots are counted at the precincts in front of witnesses, the totals are posted, the local newspapers will then list all the totals from the precincts and total those so that anybody with a calculator can cross-check and make sure the math is correct. Then the state newspapers take the city totals, list them completely and a total, so you can take your calculator and verify that. And the national newspapers take the state totals, list all of those, and totals, so you can check it with a calculator. This means we're going to have literally 100 million Americans acting as election supervisors to make sure that count is correct. You don't need these tabulation centers, you don't need these optical scan and punch card readers, and you certainly don't need these electronic voting machines. And we need tough voter ID laws, and a lot of the states that overturned their voter ID laws for this last election are already starting to reinstate them. And we need to do what they do over there in the Middle East, which is there's a little jar of blue dye, and when you vote, you stick your finger in it, and it's harmless, and after a week, it'll wear off. But that proves you voted and means you can't vote ever again in that election.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, we have to do that. And once we get through this attempted coup d'etat by Hillary and the liberalologists, I'm going to be putting my focus for the next 2 years on demanding a total overhaul of the election system. And under President Trump, we stand a good chance of getting it. Because Trump knows the election was being rigged against him, so does Bernie Sanders. We're going to get all these people together and say it is time for a fundamental change to how elections are done in this country, because the current system is literally designed to facilitate and conceal election fraud, and we need to go to a system that is open and verifiable by ordinary citizens.
Yes, I agree.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, and we're going to let you go here. And before we take another phone call, I want to get a few more stories in here. Let's look at how the fake news gets out there. And this Russia hacked the election is a good example. The Washington Post writes an article based on an unnamed, anonymous source. The New York Times then cites the Washington Post as the authoritative truth. And then every other corporate media outlet says, well, the New York Times and the Washington Compost are saying it must be true. And that's how the fake news gets put out there. That's how it flows. It comes out from these two major newspapers, the New York Times and the Washington Compost, and they just, the New York Slimes, we're going to rename them as well. The New York Slimes and the Washington Compost are held up as the absolute gospel, unimpeachable, sacrosanct truth that we should never, ever, ever question. even when they come out with these giant whoppers like Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. Now, over at Fox News, remember what I said the other day about we're starting to see the corporate media divide into two camps. One camp is struggling to just take the world back to the way it was in the 1950s and 1960s. We, the corporate media, will decide for you what's important, what you should be thinking, what you should ignore. But we're starting to see more and more of the corporate media understand they're going to have to evolve and adapt to the new reality of a distributed citizen media. And Forbes is starting to show that. And over at Fox News, Tucker Carlson is doing that. And Tucker Carlson was interviewing Robert McElvain, who's a history professor down in Mississippi. And he wrote this article in the Huffington Compost, saying there is substantial evidence that Russia stole the election for Donald Trump. Substantial evidence was the key word here. So Carlson brought him on and said, what is your evidence? And the professor just kept repeating over and over again, Russia hacked it, Russia hacked it. Okay, you say you have substantial evidence, what is it? And it just got more and more heated with this professor just literally having this attitude, you should just take my word for it, I'm a history professor. And finally, Tucker Carlson cut him off and said, I'm cutting you off, I gave you a chance to share that substantial evidence with us, you refuse to be real. And he basically pulled the plug on him. So good for Tucker Carlson. And I got to tell you, while we're on that subject of the newscasters, I used to have a lot of respect for Keith Olbermann, but he's drunk the Kool-Aid on this one, and he's out there saying the Russians are, taking over our country, the Red Scare is back, the commies are going to get you, and all the rest of this stuff. All right, let's take another phone call. Steve in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, you pretty much touched on what I was going to talk about, the fake news about they don't have to show the sources. They just repeat the lie over and over again and showing no evidence. But when you hear that, we've heard that little phrase right there, and they offer no source for their information where they're going with, it's a lie. But I did see on RT today, Russia TV today, that Assad was interviewed, and it was really interesting. He mentioned that the U.S. creates crisis in order to manage a crisis, which is totally true, and you and I know that.
Yes.
And all RBN listeners know that. But I really am kind of hooked on this new, I've just really discovered RT News, Russia Today, and how good, incredible, and resourceful these people are, and show their sources.
That's an important point to make here. Don't worry about the commercial break. I'm going to take you through the commercial break, but I wanted to make a point here. I took a course in journalism in college as one of my electives outside my major. And, back then they were teaching the way you do journalism is who, what, where, when, how, why, and sometimes, how. Always have at least two independent, verifiable sources before you, go to print. And we're seeing the American media just ignore that now. It's a giant rumor-mongering machine. I mean, the Washington Compost standards for journalism have plunged from what they were back in the Watergate days down to the level of the Midnight Sun. We have an anonymous source that tells us the incredible frog boy is on the loose again. And it really is shameful, but you're right. Russia Today is still being very professional, multiple sources. They document where they're getting the information so that people can look at it and verify it for themselves, as opposed to this bombast we're getting from America's corporate media of, you will believe if we tell you to believe, or you're a Russian stooge and a traitor, and we're going to put you in the FEMA camps. I'm paraphrasing loosely here.
Well, actually, RT actually went to the extent to go to Aleppo and actually interview citizens. And citizens, they were saying, well, we're hearing all these terrible things the United States is printing up in the headlines, and it's terrible. And the citizens were saying, no, it's not. The Western media is running with this. They're fabricating and lying. And he said, if it was so bad, would I be here in Aleppo with my daughter, my children right now?
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. And you're not seeing any American media in Aleppo. You're not seeing them there at all. Listen, we got to take a break for commercials. But, Steve, I am going to keep you over the commercial break, so don't hang up. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're still talking with Steve in California about the fake news. And just the fact that the American corporate media has abandoned basic journalism 101 principles on how to research a story and vet it and make sure that you're not defaming somebody, whereas Russia Today and most of the foreign media are behaving very, very professionally. Anything else you wanted to add to that, Steve?
Not to that, just two other quick comments. The North Dakota oil leak, I guess I don't know if you discussed that. 176,000 gallons spills into the creek. It happened a day ago. Nobody is covering that on corporate media, not one media source.
Well, we did cover it here because it certainly vindicates the concerns of the Dakota Access Pipeline protesters. But again, the corporate media has just said they don't need to know about the oil that's coming down the river into their cities and into their water supplies. I mean, that's going to be bad for oil company profits. So they don't need to know that because we're getting all this advertising money from those oil companies.
Right. Last comment is, I have sent you this, and I know I sent John Stadler this. Been following the Baltic Dry Index, was down minus 21, 2 days ago, minus 16, and minus 49. That's one of the biggest drops I've seen in one day. It's down to 1,003. But if you look at the stock market, which we know is not a consumer-driven stock market, we know there is zero relationship with the Baltic Dry Index compared to our Wall Street. No doubt about it.
Absolutely. They were trying to drive that Dow up to 20,000, and then the Fed hiked the rates, and the Dow just went way on down there, which shows how fragile that market really is and how much it is simply being gamed by the availability of inexpensive money. Well, the money got more expensive, and people started getting out of the stocks, and I haven't looked at the gold and silver prices since the Fed announcement, but I would expect they've gone up.
Yeah, but the raw materials are not being ordered. People are not shopping. This is the holiday season, and they are not spending, and that market should be following that Baltic Dry Index. It really should, and it does not.
Well, the time of year when the Baltic Dry Index is being influenced by the holiday shopping season is usually in May or June, because that's when the retailers are placing their orders to the manufacturers, and the manufacturers are ordering the raw materials. And the numbers weren't good back then. But yeah, basically what it means is, holiday shopping aside, people aren't buying things. They're not buying new cars. They're trying desperately to get out of debt. And the whole system is approaching lockup.
Well, Michael, the Fed increasing the rate is going to throw this economy into a tailspin. I mean, I think you're correct, Trump is going to inherit economic collapse. He's going to inherit it, and they're going to blame him for it.
Well, see, that's the good news with the rate hike, because we're going to see the economy start to head down before Trump takes office, and so nobody's going to buy that Trump wrecked the economy. We're seeing all these people coming, bringing jobs back to the U.S., making infrastructure investments. And it's put the liberalologists into an absolute panic, because it proves that Trump's approach, being businesslike, is a lot better than liberal ideology in terms of actually providing a comfortable lifestyle to the American people. And for the New World Order globalists, this is a nightmare. You know, we've worked so hard to get the American people used to a third world lifestyle, and now they're going to start becoming prosperous again. That's just going to make it more difficult to drop those borders.
That's it, Michael. Hey, thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot here, and I'm going to have to scroll back up because, let me see. I think. Mark in Oregon. Okay, Mark in Oregon. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. How are you, sir?
Doing fine. We're going to have to be fast. We're coming up on a commercial break, but I am going to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
I appreciate it. And before I forget, Merry Christmas, very Happy New Year in life to you and yours.
Melikalikimaka.
Thank you. Mike, I wanted to get into what Larry Nichols, who I think you're familiar with.
Oh, very much so. I've had him on the show. I've actually known him all the way back to the 1980s. We corresponded all the time about all that drug running and everything that was going on in Arkansas.
Yeah, he's a great man.
He is. All right, I'm going to put you on hold. I'm going to have to put you on hold. Got to take a break for commercials. Don't hang up. I'm coming right back to you. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking with Mark in Oregon, and we're talking about Larry Nichols, who's been on the show, and I have corresponded with him throughout the years about all of the crimes and corruptions of the Clintons, going all the way back to that CIA gun and drug running operation out of Arkansas under then Governor Bill Clinton, down to Nicaragua to arm the Contras, all of which was illegal, and that's why they funded it by smuggling tons of cocaine into the United States of America to sell to your children. And Bill Clinton provided security, making sure that the state drug authorities stayed away from the smuggling operation, while Hillary and the Rose Law firm set up a money laundry that involved all these land flips, Madison Guarantee, and the money was paid back out through an Arkansas state agency, the Arkansas Development Finance Authority. Act 1082 was written by Webb Hubbell and signed into law by Governor Bill Clinton, and that was the payout. The checks were supposedly business development loans that were never actually repaid. That was the money laundering. So, Mark, what do you want to add to that?
Well, I would add to Mr. Nichols' resume, Mike, that, you know, as you're aware, and I'm sure much or most all of the audience, that he was the chief counselor advisor in the general area, but particularly in the area of the Clintons holding on to the power that they had during the governorship period in Arkansas.
Yeah, he's an insider, but he reached his breaking point, which I assume is what happened inside the DNC, leading to that leak.
Yeah, well, it was actually children dying around the cocaine that was coming into Arkansas on the railroad tracks, and things that were happening to children also at that time. That he quit while Clinton was still governor of Arkansas, I believe. Left the Clinton administration there. But Larry has very savvy knowledge because he, relative to the way the Clintons campaigned, the dirty tactics they used to gain political positions in their political career as such. And he's never been wrong about that. He's been coming on Alex Jones's show for years, and it's always turned out to be right what he predicts is going to happen in the short term. Now, he has a contact in the office of Senator Jeff Sessions, the hopefully soon-to-be Attorney General of the United States, appointed by Donald Trump. And this contact, who has contacted him today or yesterday, it's very recent information that's come to him because he called into Alex's show to actually be on. He wasn't scheduled to be on, but he can be on any time he wants to. That's how highly Alex regards Larry Nichols. And he says his contact in Senator Sessions' office said that there is a very serious threat on the electoral college vote here. We know that Nancy Pelosi's daughter is actually collecting Republican electors to come in and listen to a lecture by the CIA saying all about how the Russians have hacked this election in Trump's favor and that the election is not really won by Trump, but actually was won by Hillary in the Electoral College, that things were so skewed by the Russians and their shenanigans interfering with the American election through the cyber network, that actually they have come to the conclusion that Hillary Clinton is the winner of the Electoral College, and that they
I don't think the CIA believes that she won the election. But remember, the Clintons can blackmail the CIA over all that cocaine smuggling back in Arkansas in the 1980s. And so Hillary has the CIA by the short and curlies. And yes, we're seeing they're trying to convince Republicans that Russia's the villain, Russia's this and Russia's that. I don't know how much traction they're getting because certainly for those people who are only watching the corporate media, they're probably buying into this story. But that's only 6% of the American population. And I think a bigger problem than gullible electors are corruptible ones because of that one elector out of Texas who went public, and he got a lot of publicity over the fact that even though he was supposed to vote for Trump, he was going to vote for Hillary Clinton. And
I saw that schmuck. I saw him interviewed on Fox. He's a real piece of work there.
And it turns out, he's married with 3 children. He's out of work. He's bankrupt. He was signed up for the Ashley Madison cheating website, and now he's been linked with this payday loan scam company, and so he's in a lot of trouble. Which means he can be bought. He needs about $200,000 plus legal protection. And if this is the caliber of people who are being chosen as electors, then there's a major problem. Now, the upside of this whole thing with Pelosi and trying to convince the Republican electors, most of the states, in addition to their law saying that the electors must vote with the will of the voters, they have provisions saying electors can be replaced right up to the day of the Electoral College itself if they indicate that they are not going to comply with the will of the state voters. So we may see some last-second shuffling going on there. And behind that, of course, there's a final fail-safe mechanism in the Constitution where if one senator and one representative conclude that the Electoral College was not acting in good faith, they can basically, Congress can override the Electoral College and take the decision for president and vice president to themselves.
Roger Stone came on after Larry Nichols. Roger feels still very hopeful, very optimistic that the Electoral College will go as it should go relative to the popular vote.
Let's look at the count here. Hillary needs 41 electors to defect from Trump, because there are already 2 Hillary electors who are saying they're not going to vote for her because of all the stuff that's gone on down. So she needs 41, of which she appears to have 20. And there's this Harvard law professor who's out there offering free legal advice to electors who want to vote for Hillary Clinton and how they're going to deal with the fact that they're going to be facing legal problems in their home states if they do that. Now, that's aiding and abetting the violation of state law right there. This Harvard law professor ought to be in jail. He ought to be in handcuffs right now.
They all should, Mike. It's all to the point with them because they are totally in the corner, back up against the wall, talking all the way up to the Rothschilds and the Vatican. They're going to lose their world system that they want to bring in here, which they've brought largely in already. They've compiled it through the years, and they've really built up a structure of it. And that's all going to be taken away with Donald Trump very quickly.
Yes.
And they are desperate, and they will do anything. And if they can't get their way in the Electoral College, I truly believe, as Alex Jones does and Larry Nichols does, that they're going to go to civil insurrection in this country, and that's been written into the agenda for a long time. Mm-hmm. There's going to be so much upset among the large majority of the populace that voted for Donald Trump and are for Donald Trump and for their families, for this country, for our very physical survival outside of FEMA camps, that they're going to go to that agenda for an insurrection, a large civil disobedience, turning to violence and having to be brought down by martial law, which equals FEMA camps, which equals the end of everything. That's where they're going to go to if they stop Donald Trump. It'll go to that if they don't make it in the Electoral College.
I'll tell you one other thing here that I'm very, very concerned about. I still think that Trump's thank you tour was a huge, huge mistake. And I am expecting there will be a serious assassination attempt on him before next Monday. Because if they can kill Donald Trump, then the Electoral College can hand the White House to Hillary and just say that we had no other choices. There was nobody else out there. But to hold a positive note, because I'm leaning more toward Roger Stone than Larry Nichols, look at everything they've tried to do so far. They tried rioting in the streets. That didn't work. They tried death threats on the electors. That didn't work. Now they're trying this linking Russia to Donald Trump, and they're not getting traction with that either. And all of these things, the public perception is that Hillary and the liberalologists are behaving like a bunch of spoiled children. And so it doesn't matter what they do from this point forward. Nobody's going to see this as legitimate. Okay?
Probably 3 months ago, maybe a little bit longer, I said to you that I didn't know how he was going to do it because it didn't look optimistic or really pessimistic at that time. Donald Trump was just struggling, campaigning like heavily, putting out a lot of energy into the campaign, personal appearances, and we all knew at the time that they were pushing and pulling every dirty trick they would, and they pull some more down the line from there in the future up to now, and they have.
Yes.
And I said that I believe that God has his hand on Donald Trump's back, and he's got Donald Trump's six. He's got his back because he wants Donald Trump to be the president of this country. By all appearances, and I know in the spiritual knowledge that I have through the years personally, everything was ringing in my gut that way. It's held true all the way through the campaign, all the way through the victory, and I believe he's going to be inaugurated as the 45th president of the United States. But we're going to play a part in that. You great radio people, Alex Jones, yourself, and others, people who call in like myself, try to share the enthusiasm, even if it's to get the word out, shout it to the rooftops. These people are not going to back down, even if they're allowed somehow to bring this country into martial law and have the end of everything just occur all around this election. We need to be popularizing the shenanigans that they're pulling in the Electoral College and what it can turn into, and the civil disobedience aspect. That needs to get out there so people will be really motivated not to fall back on our laurels and just because Donald won the election, he's going to automatically get in because they're doing everything they can, and it can get real nasty.
It's a coup d'etat. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Now, I sort of take the same position that Ben Franklin did. God helps those who help themselves, and so obviously, we're going to continue to be very active and involved, decisively engaged in opposition to this coup d'etat. But it's a long way to go to January 20th, and it really is insane. If their plan is to incite some kind of civil disobedience and domestic rebellion, that's going to come down to a very important question. On whose side are the rank-and-file military going to come down on? Now, I know the high command...
Come down on our side, Mike. They're going to come down on our side.
I tend to agree. I tend to agree because I know a lot of military people, especially living here in Hawaii. We have the highest per capita density of military of any state in the Union. And I know a lot of these people, and they are all strict constitutionalists. They all have very strong senses of honor and ethics, and I can't imagine anybody below the rank of major thinking that what Hillary is doing and a coup d'etat is the way to go. So anyway, listen, I need to let you go because we're running out. We got to thank you very much. We got a bunch of callers on the line here. I'm going to take some phone calls, and then we're going to close the phone lines because I have got a lot of stuff to get through. So we're going to switch over to another Mark. This one's over in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mark in North Carolina?
Mark. Hi, Mark. Oh, Mike?
Yes.
Me?
Yeah, me, Mike, you, Mark.
I want to give dittos to the other Mark from Oregon, but because he's right on the money. But, what I want to say is about RT. RT gives you information you don't get on our mainstream media. They actually have reporters to go into Syria, to go into Aleppo and Palmyra and other places and show you what's going on, show you the people, reading the Syrian army as liberators and the Russians as liberators, not what the mainstream media here, including Fox, tells you.
Yeah, our corporate media, they're standing in front of green screens using scenes from other wars and other times, to sell their message here. And, I get emails all the time saying, how can you listen to Russia Today as opposed to CNN? And my answer is always the same. Russia Today didn't lie to us about Saddam having weapons of mass destruction.
The other thing is, as far as why the left, like Keith Olbermann, I say he's actually Keith Underman, would say what he's saying and say what they're saying about Russia. It's not the Red Scare anymore. They wish Russia was still a communist country. They don't like Russia today because Russia is now a democracy. They're free people. The Christian cross has replaced the what do you call it?
Hammer and sickle
all over the country. St. Petersburg is now St. Petersburg, not Leningrad anymore.
It's more fundamental than that. It's more fundamental than that. Putin took direct control of Russia's central bank to manage Russia's public currency as a public utility. That was literally the moment, the split second, that Russia went from being friend and ally of the United States to the top of the U.S. government's special high-interest targets list. And because of Putin's wise management, the ruble is now a serious threat to the U.S. dollar's hegemonic domination of the world economy, along with China's yuan. And that's why we're always hearing this, Russia's bad, China's bad, we've got to go to war with these people, we've got to crush them down, and your children are going to have to die to preserve, that which we treasure most in our society, which is that piece of ink and paper.
Yeah, well, he kicked the Rothschild bankers out of Russia, and that was a good thing. I mean, that they were running the place into the ground after the fall of the Soviet Union.
The Rothschild bankers run every place they do business into the ground. That's the problem. But they're always willing to share their loot with the political leadership in exchange for the population of the country being sold into their debt slavery.
Yeah, one more thing, Mike. I just want to give a warning to these clowns who think they're going to take this country away from us. We in Middle America, if you dare try to overthrow Donald Trump, and that's what this would be a coup, you think you're going to have martial law. So let me tell you something. You lefties would have no chance against us people in Middle America. We've got way more veterans, way more people that know how to handle firearms, way more people that know how to set ambushes and other things like that than you do. On top of that, like you just said, the mainstream, the rank and file military would not back you up. They would back us up. The U.S. could literally demand Hillary could literally demand the United Nations send troops in. Peacekeepers. We have to keep the peace. Well, the UN wouldn't have but the UN wouldn't have a chance. They can't even go into a third world country and control it.
That's true. They're really messed up. All right, listen, Mark, I've got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. Back with a couple more phone calls. Then we're going to close the phone lines and do some news. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go to Ralph in New York City. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I want to ask you a hypothetical question. And what concept will be under economic collapse under Trump, and basically in the entire world towards the United States? What would it really mean if a true economic collapse really hits this country under a Trump administration?
Well, the collapse is going to be global, and it may start here in the United States. It could very well, in fact, I would say it's more likely to start in Europe. But because of economic globalism and the shutting down of borders to economic activity, there's going to be no way to contain it. Remember back in 2008 when the mortgage-backed security fraud melted down, and the contagion from that spread all over the world, and what should have just been a problem for Wall Street became a serious issue for the banks of Europe and Asia. And in the coming crash, it's going to be a lot worse because they didn't learn from that lesson. The globalists are still out there saying we want one planet, one economy, and cashless society. So when it all implodes, everybody's eating each other.
So will it be good or bad, in your opinion?
It's going to be bad. Well, there is no way to have a good economic collapse. If you're looking for a positive, it'll be the end of globalism. Basically, if nobody has any money, governments can't tax it away from you to pay for more war. We could be seeing a collapse of the American empire and aftermath very much like the collapse of Rome and its Western empire, which basically opened the door to a new Dark Ages. It's not impossible for it to happen again where, everybody descends into religious hysteria and warlords and fighting, and they turn their back on science and medicine and technology. It is not beyond the realm of possibility that we could see human civilization take a major step backward.
Exactly. So we could be in that situation anytime soon, you're saying?
It's only a matter of time. I'm amazed they've been able to hold it together as long as they have. And I know the conventional wisdom is as long as they've got the computers and the printing presses, they can paper over all the debts. I mean, this idea about negative interest rates is absolutely absurd. There is no such thing. If the interest rates are negative, you are technically in a state of default. And look at all the banks who are doing that right now.
Well, Janet Yellen just raised the interest rate, what, 1% today?
They've raised it in a window. It's from, it was 1%. And it had an immediate devastating effect on the stock market because the stock market doesn't represent the economic activity of the American people. It's basically this giant open-air gambling casino that is being propped up with cheap money. Well, the money isn't cheap anymore, and that's why the stock market's taking a hit. And it's a reminder of just how fragile the stock market is and how much of an illusion those sky-high numbers are.
Well, as I was saying, no one's spending money on real estate, no one's spending money in the stores, and Walmart's now becoming, and the shopping malls are becoming,
they're talking about Sears and Macy's may go away next year. Yeah, when all the money is piled up at the top, the economy can't work, and the money junkies don't see it. Got to take a break here for our station identification. Back with one more phone call from John in Barbados, and then we're going to have to close the phone lines for a bit. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2 here, and we're going to take one more phone call. Then we're going to close the phone lines because I got a bunch of news to get on out there. John in Barbados, aloha. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Yes, I want to recommend that people watch the Stones film Snowden. I was watching it last night, and I continually rewound certain scenes to get the real nitty-gritty of what Mr. Stone and Snowden were trying to say to us, because there is a lot of meaning in that film that you can miss. And what it shows is that the CIA actually profiles all those people who want to join. And they actually go for the right sort of slime to join the agency, Lie Factory.
Well, that's what I went through. That's what I went through over at CBS Television City. I mean, when they approached me about joining CIA, and back then I was naive. I thought the CIA were the good guys. And the first thing they asked me to do was to sabotage a game show I was working on. That was the producer wasn't a CIA asset, so that the game show that was being produced by a CIA asset would be bought by the network, and I balked at that. I didn't see what this had to do with national security or saving us from our enemies or anything, and that must have been the test when they were out there trying to see if I was going to be the kind of person who likes to join the CIA, and in hindsight, I'm proud that I failed that test miserably. And almost immediately, I lost my job at CBS, and I wound up working at a Christian TV station down in Orange, California, which was unfortunately a bit of a step down. But, yeah, absolutely. The CIA are a bunch of mafia thugs wrapped in the flag. Look at Jack Ruby, the guy who had to cowboy Lee Harvey Oswald because he wasn't supposed to survive the Texas movie theater. Ruby was not only CIA, he was a paymaster for the mafia.
Well, the other thing I want to mention is, I may seem slightly anti-American now and again, but I don't want to see it being completely destroyed, because that's the effect of what is happening with this coup d'etat.
Yes.
But what I want to tell the American people is, do not go into an armed insurrection.
I agree.
All they have to do is withdraw their labor from all these government agencies and government positions. Just don't go to work. Go on a sickie. Go to visit your doctor.
Yeah, don't fill out the paperwork. Don't get the stickers. Don't get the tags. Don't obey the laws. What are they going to do? Lock up 300 million Americans in prison? Who would work the factories and farms and fields? Again, I don't want to see violence in the streets of the United States, and I've been dreading that for years, and it concerns me that I'm hearing so much talk about it. But again, we've already seen from Hillary's people, they're willing to start riots in the streets to get what they want. And if they start riots and violence in the streets, we can't just sit here and let ourselves get clubbed to death. We're going to be forced to fight back, and we better start getting ready for that now.
Well, all I can say is, Mike, is that the most effective weapon is mass withdrawal of labor from all these government agencies civil servants, pull them out.
That's how Gandhi.
The government will grind to a halt within days.
That's how Gandhi got the British out of India. General strikes.
Yep. It's the way to go. It's non-violent, and it works. We know it works. It's worked several times in the past.
Yes.
So I would urge everybody to consider that option instead of reaching for their guns.
I absolutely agree with you. But, if civil war comes to the United States of America, I'm certainly not going to risk my little body trying to find a way to stop it. And if I'm forced to choose a side, I think we all know which side that's going to be. Because I have been fighting against this narcocracy for 22 years now, and I'm not about to change sides on that issue.
And the other thing is, the previous callers who mentioned RT, I go to RT most days to see what they're saying. But one of the shows I watch is Crosstalk, and they always have one of these American apologists on, to discuss various aspects. And as you said, they do provide a lot of information alongside the main body of
the sidebars. There's a lot of sidebars. Yes,
sidebars. Yeah, I mean, this is how journalism is supposed to be. For goodness' sake.
Yes.
So I don't just believe RT. I go to several other independent news sources to source things. There's a guy that is on Veterans Today. His name is Jonas E. Alexis.
Yes.
He's a black guy, but his articles are so cutting, and all the information that he's using is appended at the bottom of his article. And you can go to all these different news source sites and verify what the guy is saying. He is brilliant.
Yeah, well, you definitely need to do that. I'm in the process of writing a new article, and it's one that is going to be distributed beyond the website ultimately. And it's about the comment I made the other day about if we don't address the cause of autism, we are approaching a point where literally half of the workforce will be autistic and unable to be used in the workforce, and a significant chunk of the remainders are going to be tied up with the care and support of the autistic, and it could crash our entire economy. And because of where this article is going, it's taking me a long time to write it because I'm having to put all these footnotes at the bottom. I'm going out to the sources. For every statement I make in there, there's a cited source, and that really is the way it should be. Certainly for academic papers, for policy papers. But the fact that the corporate media just has come to rely so much on anonymous sources. Oh, we can't tell you who said this. And, it'll give secrets away to our enemies. Just take our word for it. Humans are warming the planet and so forth. Anyway, listen, John, thank you very much.
I was just going to say one more thing.
Real quick.
Okay. I mean, let's be honest. This new labor force, when you've got all these autistic people, is going to be hobbled by Common Core, people who don't know anything.
Well, hopefully Common Core is going away under the Trump administration. It's been an absolute unmitigated disaster. Basically, I view Common Core as the church of the liberalologists, and I'm working on some graphics for that whole situation as well. The autistic kids, for the most part, can't even go to school. I mean, that's the real heartbreak of it. And when you see all these kids who are perfectly healthy until they get those vaccinations, and then all of a sudden there's a reaction, and then the next thing the doctor says, oh, kid was autistic, he was born that way. It's got nothing to do with all this stuff we're selling you. And the parents are understandably upset. Anyway, listen, John, got to let you go. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to close the phone lines for a while because I got some stuff that I need to talk about. And we're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And to give you an idea about the liberalologists, the snowflakes out there. George Stephanopoulos is out there, or his wife is actually out there in an interview, saying their daughters are traumatized after Trump's election. Oh, my goodness. Look what Donald Trump has done. Their youngest now has to sleep in the parents' bed at night. and the other one is just totally freaked out, and the daughters are freaked out that Donald Trump is going to take away abortions. Now, the Stephanopoulos daughters are 11 and 14, which generally are not ages that tend to be that concerned about the availability of abortions. I mean, that's how nonsensical this stuff is. Now, they're having problems with students in schools being traumatized and needing special counseling, and they have to bring in a puppy dog and Play-Doh and safe spaces and all the rest of it. And it's not Donald Trump who did it. It is the teachers. Because this entire election year, the teachers were propagandizing the children about all the horrible things that were going to happen if Donald Trump got elected, in the hope that the children would then go home and re-propagandize their parents. And so now Trump won the election, and the kids' heads are filled with all this nonsense because they're not old enough to realize that teachers are full of bovine excrement as much as anybody else. And so the kids are freaking out. And they're saying, see, this is all Donald Trump's fault. No, it's your fault. You created the situation with all these fairy tales about all the horrible things that were going to happen if Trump won the election. Story over at Journal Neo. It's beginning to smell a lot like totalitarianism, and I do not mean Russia. And talking about the obvious acceleration of the agenda to end democracy, end republics, and bring the world underneath a fascist dictatorship under the guise of the New World Order. And there's an observation I've made about the New World Order globalists that has equal bearing on Hillary Clinton. I pointed out how the original foundation for the push for a global government was based on three pillars. One was a global pandemic requiring a global medical authority. That was the when pigs fly flu in 2009, which fell flat on its face. It was actually less severe than the normal seasonal flu. Then there was human-caused global warming that required a global environmental authority to save us all, and Mother Nature put the kibosh on that one. And then the third one was going to be a global economic crisis requiring a global private central bank, and they're still on track for that one. But here's the problem. Any ruling system that comes into being through lies and fraud has to be the greatest dictatorship, the greatest tyranny in history, merely to survive the circumstances of its own creation. When you impose a governmental system with lies and fraud, you have to take away freedom of speech. Otherwise, the people are going to be saying, you lied about that flu. You lied about human-caused global warming. Why should we listen to you? And the same thing applies to Hillary Clinton. If she succeeds in this coup d'etat, I guarantee you there will be an immediate attack on the First Amendment, not just the independent media, the First Amendment everywhere. Anybody who says anything negative about Hillary's new regime will be deemed an enemy of the state and dealt with. And there will certainly be gun confiscation, because Hillary is going to be a paranoid ruler, as all usurpers are throughout history. Go back and look at your history book, at every king, every queen who stole a throne and how they treated their subject population to consolidate and guarantee their power. It was not pleasant. And the same thing will happen if Hillary succeeds in this coup d'etat. A story coming out of IntelliHub, why the liberals can't handle the truth about Russia hacking the election. Well, Donald Trump won the election in a landslide in the Electoral College and probably the popular vote as well. And the liberalologists and the Hillaryites aren't having any of it. They're crying, they're whining, they've turned to these malevolent tactics. They tried rioting, that didn't work. They tried death threats on the Electoral College members, that failed. Then they went after the independent media with this fake news narrative. That has now fallen apart. The Washington Compost was required to step back from that story. Jill Stein's recount was an epic fail. But she's going to go home with about $6 million from her gullible supporters for that, or from whoever was secretly funneling the money to her. So she's made out okay. We shouldn't feel sorry for her. And so now they're trying this, Donald Trump is a Russian stooge. And all of these tactics are being put out there in this belief that the American people have already forgotten about the riots, the death threats, the fake news, and that we'll just see it as a little isolated incident because that's the way the corporate media is presenting it. And it doesn't work that way. Americans have memories. The independent media is a collective memory outside government and corporate media control. And so we're lining up all these things that Hillary and the liberologists have been trying to do, and we see it as a whole, as an attempt at a coup d'etat. And anything she does from here on out is going to be judged on that. And that's why this Russia narrative isn't getting any traction. You know, oh, this is just another recount. It's just another riots in the street by the snowflakes. She's blown her own credibility. And she's taking the Washington Compost and the CIA down with her. Now, getting on to this issue about social media, real media, fake media, the New York Slimes CEO is now out there saying that the social media companies should be forced to cover the loss of revenue of the paper news because people aren't buying newspapers anymore. The New York Slimes is saying, well, because they're going to the computers. No, it's because the New York Slimes newspapers are full of lies. Actually, mostly they're full of ads, is the problem. So they're out there. Mark Thompson, the president and CEO of the New York Slimes, is basically saying Silicon Valley's social media and search giants are to blame for the corporate media's falling profits, and therefore they should be forced to provide subsidies. Now, if they actually pull this one off, I think I'm going to start a kerosene lamp factory and then demand the light bulb companies pay me a subsidy. That's how ridiculous all of this is. Now, getting on over to the White House, Barack Obama, our Nobel Peace Prize winning president, has now basically vetoed the release of the report of the torture of detainees by the Central Intelligence Agency. Obama seems to feel we don't need to know what our government was doing to these innocent people with our money. Remember, the U.S. government actually tortured Iraqis to death trying to find weapons of mass destruction that turned out never to exist. Talk about Kafkaesque. And Obama is out there polishing his legacy, wants to look good in the history books. That's why he wants Syria to get propped up until Trump is in office, so America's worst military defeat since Vietnam goes on Trump's legacy and not on Obama's. So it's not surprising that we're seeing this article in the corporate media about how McClatchy Marist ran an opinion poll showing that 55% of Americans were satisfied with Barack Obama's job performance for the last 8 years. And we need to keep in mind that this exact same polling organization was out there assuring us Hillary was going to win the presidency in a landslide. Now, Forbes is out there with their most powerful person list of the world. Vladimir Putin is number 1. Donald Trump is second. Angela Merkel third. Barack Obama, 48. David Cameron didn't even make the list. So I'm sure somewhere in the White House, Barack Obama is looking into a mirror and saying, I am powerful, I am powerful, I am powerful. I'm exceptional. Needing his Play-Doh or something. Now, a federal judge has asked to see the FBI search warrants that were used to access Hillary Clinton's emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop. And he's hinting that he may unseal all these documents. And that could throw a real monkey wrench into the coup d'etat if there is something there that was not already publicly released regarding corruption at the foundation. So that may be a factor that's coming in to play. Now then, out of the recounts, Jill Stein made out pretty well. I mean, her political career is over. Nobody's going to take her seriously from this point on, but she's got a nice little nest egg set aside, so I'm sure she'll be happy. But it's turned out that in these recount states, evidence of massive election fraud keeps surfacing. And Michigan and Wisconsin are now launching investigations separate from the recount as to what's going on. 37% of the precincts in Wayne County, Michigan, which is where Detroit is located, showed major discrepancies where there were more ballots in the ballot boxes than voters on the polling records. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about how the Jill Stein recounts have backfired horribly and revealed there was, in fact, massive election fraud in the general election. And during the recount, they were just finding all these ballot boxes that had way more ballots than they were supposed to. Some had fewer. There was one ballot box where the paperwork said there should be 300 votes in there. There were only 50. That came from a strongly pro-Trump precinct. And we've been hearing from sources about some of the other things they were finding, and now we're getting verification from Alexander Higgins, where 63% of those Detroit precincts with way too many ballots in the ballot boxes, they were Hillary Clinton votes. And the electronic machines, the same thing. Scanners in 248 of Detroit's 392 precincts counted more ballots than the actual number of voters. Those machines were preloaded with Hillary votes. If you have not seen Hacking Democracy, it was a wonderful HBO documentary. You need to track it down. Buy the DVD. It's got to be part of your permanent collection. And the documentary focuses on the work of a wonderful lady named Bev Harris, who runs a website called blackboxvoting.org, which I'm sure is going to soon be on the list of fake news sites. How dare you question the sanctity and honesty of the election? And do you remember back when Donald Trump was saying we need to be on guard about election fraud, and the hue and cry that came up from Hillary and Obama, how dare you damage our democracy by suggesting our elections might be fraudulent? And, of course, today they're out there saying, oh, Russia rigged the election. Russia hacked the election. All the actual hard evidence points at election rigging in favor of Hillary Clinton, not in favor of Donald Trump. And the only hard evidence of where the hacking came from is down in Georgia, who caught the Department of Homeland Security trying to break into their voter information database. Now, they're finding over in Wisconsin, they found discrepancies. They found 51,000 fraudulent votes. Now, as you know, Jill Stein was out there trying to get a full recount at Pennsylvania. She went from judge to judge to judge and finally got shot down. Pennsylvania just shut down her latest attempt for a recount. And she'd gone in there 6 separate grounds for demanding a recount, and the judge basically said her grounds demanding a recount border on the irrational. And he's absolutely right. They were screaming that Russia was hacking the election in states where the election machines aren't even on the internet. To rig the election, you have to be there on the ground. Did anybody see Putin fly in his airplane to these states? All right, let's turn to the war zones because there's a lot of developments going on down there. It looked like Aleppo was kind of over and done with. A deal had been reached between the U.S.-backed terrorists and the Syrian government. They were just going to walk away. But somebody somewhere started shelling Syrian troops, and so the battle for Aleppo is back on, and the evacuation by the U.S.-backed terrorists has now been stopped. ISIS is trying to retake Palmyra, heavy clashes at the Taiz Air Base. And rather interestingly, or perhaps predictably, Bashar al-Assad has given an interview pointing out that close relationship between Obama's waiver on arms export limits to the U.S.-backed terrorists and all of a sudden the terrorists' new aggression. Obama is over there being Santa Obama, and here in my sack I've got stingers, and I've got grenades, and I got all this stuff. Here, you've all been very naughty boys this year, so you get more of the toys. Like I said, Obama does not want the defeat in Syria on his legacy, so he's going to spend however much of your money and your children as he needs to shove it into Donald Trump's administration. We got to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And interesting little story that came out of Russia today, and it's originating in Britain. There's a former Army colonel, Bob Stewart, who's now a member of Parliament. And he basically stood up to the members of Parliament who are saying, we need to do airdrops into those terrorists who are fighting against Assad. We've got to do that. And he basically said, if you want airdrops into Aleppo, you should be on the airplanes yourself, which I guess is the British version of, here's your rifle, here's your parachute. I don't know about you, but I am really fed up with all these politicians living in very safe places in the capital cities of countries, sending other people's children out to be killed and crippled in wars for greed. I'm really fed up with it. I think probably you are as well, and it's time for us to make a big stink about that as well. Now, a listener wrote on in talking about that poll where the majority of Americans are happy with President Obama's job performance over the last 8 years, and he said, you got to put up your own poll, which I did. And so far, 100% of the respondents are saying no, they are not satisfied with President Obama's job as president, so that gets to go into his legacy as well. Now, getting on back to Syria and the fake news, as the callers have pointed out, Russia today is on the ground in Aleppo showing what's really been going on. There have been videos coming on out of the people of Aleppo just having parties and welcoming the Syrian and Russian forces coming on in. But the narrative in the American corporate media is still, oh, this is a terrible disaster. Those people in Aleppo, they're back in the evil clutches of Assad. And I'm not kidding you. The corporate media put out this story claiming that civilians in Aleppo are committing mass suicide because Syria has come back on in. And by the way, if you're having trouble reaching my website right now, it's because the Tantrum Squad has shown on up, and they're throwing a tantrum, is basically what it is. Somewhere out there in cyberspace are some of Hillary's people, and they're rolling around on the floor, and they're crying, and they're kicking, and they're screaming, and eventually they'll go away. Turkey has built, or is building, 89 new military outposts along the Syria and Iraq border. Turkey is more and more looking like a big part of the problem rather than a possible solution. The whole Middle East is spinning out of control. Assad was saying the U.S. creates chaos so that they can manage the chaos. The problem with that is the U.S. isn't managing this chaos. They just created a mess, and they don't know what to do with it. Now, Vladimir Putin is out there being a statesman again, and even though Great Britain has been making all of these belligerent comments about Russia and Putin, Russia's official position is we do not see Great Britain as an adversary. We would like to have good friendly relations despite the tough talk coming from you. We're willing to turn the other cheek. And hopefully Russia and Britain can learn to cooperate and do trade, peace through commerce, especially after the Brexit. Meanwhile, we're seeing over in Zero Hedge another story where the people in NATO have a completely different agenda. Remember, all of those top military officers, if they don't have a war to fight, then they don't have money to play with. They don't have soldiers to boss around, and they're just sitting in their office and in their garish uniforms and ribbons and medals, They look like a marching band that lost their instruments if they don't have a war to actually fight. So right now, the Council on Foreign Relations are saying the top conflict risk for 2017 is a war between NATO and Russia. So basically, that's the timetable. War with Russia next year. Because we have to defeat that evil ruble before it displaces the U.S. dollar as the global trade and banking currency, and then we're going to deal with China. And so not too surprisingly, Reuters is actually reporting that the United States has declared it is ready to confront Beijing on the South China Sea. This is coming on out from an admiral, Admiral Harry Harris, head of the U.S. Pacific Command. He's down there in Sydney giving a speech about how tough we are to go. Well, Admiral, you should be looking at the quality of our weapons, in particular the Independence-class littoral combat ships, the Freedom-class littoral combat ships, the utter floating disaster, our latest aircraft carrier, the Gerald R. Ford is. Yeah, we're ready to confront China only if China loads their artillery with marshmallows, because our weapons are so easy to damage and they cost so much money, and really, you've got to agree to be very gentle with us while we invade your country and destroy your economy. Let's take a phone call from Apostle in New Jersey. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. What a wicked web we weave when trying to deceive.
Well, I'm not in that line of work myself, so I wouldn't know.
I'm talking about the New York Times.
The New York Slimes. What have they done now?
Well, they lost $54.5 million in the third quarter.
Yes.
And now they want government subsidies.
No, they want subsidies from the social media companies. It's all those internet people's fault that our business is faltering. It has nothing to do with the fact that we've been lying through our teeth to the American people, all this time.
Right, but I guess following government or CIA orders, whatever, didn't work for them, did it?
No, it didn't, and that's really a big part of the problem. All of the current generation of corporate media people grew up with this model that their job was to control what the American people were thinking, and they made very good livings out of it. And now it's all coming apart. And they don't want to stop. They don't want to give up those paychecks. They don't know what else to do about it. And it is all coming apart around them. There's no one place they can point to and say, this will solve the problem, because they themselves are the problem. I'm going to share a little story about the New York Times, the paper of record, and what a great newspaper it is. Back when the Titanic sank, the New York Times was actually a very, very small newspaper. One of many, back when there was a diversity of opinion and New York had dozens of newspapers with different points of view about what's going on. And the New York Times, as a publicity stunt, had gotten itself one of these newfangled gizmos called a radio, and the antenna was up on the top of the building, and they had the receiver. They didn't have a transmitter, they couldn't send, but they had a receiver that they were listening to radio traffic, literally in a storefront window at street level, so people could walk on by and say, wow, the New York Times is on the cutting edge of technology, they've got a radio receiver. And they heard being passed along from person to person, the Titanic had hit an iceberg, and the editor of the New York Times decided he was going to take a gamble to sell some newspaper headlines and declare that the ship had sunk, even though it hadn't been reported yet. But he wanted to get out to the street with the New York Times, Titanic sunk, great loss of life. And it turned out he got lucky, because the ship really had sunk. And this stunt to sell more newspapers with that blaring headline, is what launched the New York Times into being the premier newspaper of the city. But at the same time that they did that Titanic stunt, the New York Times featured stories about, alien civilizations on Mars and the canals they were building and all this other stuff. They were a tabloid when they began. They just got very, very lucky. And today, of course, they're back to pushing nonsensical stories about Russian hacking and Saddam's nuclear weapons and Assad's sarin gas, and, how everybody working in the independent media is a Russian agent.
I've never heard that story before, Mike.
Yeah, well, I learned that back in that journalism class I took in college all those years ago.
Also, about the Electoral College.
Yes.
You got 40 electors. They're requesting intel reports before voting,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all following Cindy Pelosi's lead.
Yeah, but they're all Democrats. They're all Democrats.
Right.
You know, and they're going to try. They're already voting for Hillary. This is not changing the makeup of the Electoral College. What they're trying to do is to create an army of propagandists going into the Electoral College in all the state capitals, because they don't actually meet in one place, by the way, and to go on in and say, you can't vote for Trump. I know you're a Republican, and I know you're pledged to Donald Trump, and I know your state will sue you and throw you in jail or whatever it is they're going to do if you don't vote for Donald Trump, but he's a Russian stooge. We've got the evidence here. And I'm presuming that probably most of those Republican electors are not going to pay attention, because you've got the FBI saying it didn't happen. You've got the NSA saying it didn't happen. You've got the Director of National Intelligence, who is the boss over the CIA, saying it didn't happen. You've got the CIA now denying they sent a secret report to the Congress. And the Washington Compost's entire story trying to say Donald Trump, the election was stolen for Donald Trump by Russia, is based on a single anonymous source. And I think if we keep that out there, if we flood social media with it, these GOP electors are going to pick up on it. If anybody out there has the addresses and contact information for the GOP electors, do us all a favor and drop them a note, or give them a phone call and say, you realize this whole Russia-Trump thing is just another desperate attempt by Hillary to steal the White House. Just like Jill Stein's recounts, just like the fake news story about the independent media, just like the death threats to the electors, just like the rioting in the streets, none of which actually worked. And if we can get that word to these GOP electors, these Trump electors, they're going to stand firm. And I'm pretty sure at this point Donald Trump's people are also contacting them all to say that this is complete and utter nonsense.
I'm just hoping that they go through with it. This way her electoral total makes her even more of a disgrace or an embarrassment to the Democratic Party.
Well, there are 2 Hillary electors who are saying under no circumstances will they vote for her. So at this point, Hillary would need 41 electors to vote for her instead of Donald Trump in order to grab the White House. Now, 41 electors has never happened in history. They've never had more than 1 or 2 electors. And those were protest votes that didn't change the outcome of the election. If this were to happen, Congress is fully justified in saying clearly the Electoral College is not acting in good faith, going back to all those death threats, and Congress then has the right under the Constitution to intervene. And as I mentioned before, many of the states that have these laws saying the electors must vote in accord with the election results in the state also have provisions saying the electors can be replaced right up to the very day of the Electoral College if it appears they are not going to comply with that law.
Okay, Mike, want to thank you for your time. Love your show. My best to Claire, please.
I certainly will. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. Now, over at the United Nations, they have taken issue with this bill that is going through the Knesset over in Israel that is going to retroactively legalize 4,000 illegal settler homes in the West Bank. Now, those homes shouldn't be in the West Bank because the West Bank is occupied, and under international law, Israel isn't not allowed to just go on in and take it over for their own use, although they've been doing it all along, and now they're doing it in the Golan Heights. So the UN Human Rights Chief is saying that this bill in Israel is unequivocally illegal under international law, which isn't going to have any impact whatsoever on Israel because they think they're above the laws of man, and of course they can always rely on a veto at the Security Council by the U.S. ambassador. Maybe a little less so after January 20th. But that's always been why Israel continues to get away with everything they're doing. They're as protected by the corrupt U.S. government system as Hillary Clinton herself. Now, over at the University of Manchester, student representatives have voted to support the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel. And, of course, we're going to start seeing all kinds of hate crime hoaxes and declarations that they're all anti-Semites and Jew haters and the Hitler worshippers and all the rest of the screaming that you usually get from Israel when Israel does not get its way. Isn't it amazing how many people in high positions of power are behaving this way? I imagine it must be incredibly difficult for parents to try and raise their children to be adults at a time when all of our world leaders are behaving like children. What kind of an example are these people setting for the next generation? That is of serious, serious concern. Now, getting on back to Obama's legacy, because of his policy involving drones, he has effectively institutionalized assassination. And he has set a precedent for future presidents to act as judge, jury, and executioner without any other due process whatsoever against anybody deemed to be an enemy of the United States of America. Anywhere. And that is not what the United States is supposed to be about. There are supposed to be checks and balances and safeguards. And some of these drones are being targeted on the basis of profiles. There was one horrible, tragic accident where apparently one of the profile is that exceptionally tall men are more likely to be in a terrorist organization because of their physical advantage. And therefore, they're automatically targeted just for being tall. They're targeted just for being tall. So a drone operator sees this crowd in the street, and there's one very tall person in there, and so he targets it for a strike. And it turned out it was a teacher and a bunch of their students on a field trip. And they blew them all to bloody bits. That's how out of control it is. They don't know for a fact the people that they're targeting are actually a threat to the United States or have done anything wrong at all. It's a terror campaign. Obama is using his drones the way Adolf Hitler used the V-1 buzz bomb and the V-2 ballistic missile to terrorize an enemy population into coercing their government to capitulate to Obama's point of view. That's what Hitler was using the buzz bomb and V-2 for, to get the people of Great Britain to basically stand up to Winston Churchill and say, look, make peace any way you can. Of course, it backfired horribly. Those missile attacks hardened the British people's resolve to stand firm until the end of the war. And the same thing is happening in all these countries the U.S. is using drones on. It's not terrorizing them into submission. It's angering them. Okay, we're coming up here on another commercial break. When we come on back, we're going to be talking about the economic news for a little bit. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our radio show here. We're going to talk about the economy now. As you probably already heard, the Federal Reserve has hiked rates for the first time this year. And it was 25 basis points. And, of course, it had an immediate effect on the stock market. It plunged. Then there was an attempt to push it back up, and that failed as well. So they fell short of getting the Dow to the 20,000 mark. They were at the... And you know something? How ridiculous it is when they're treating the stock market like it's a sports score. You know it's all a fraud. They're going to have cheerleaders out there on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange in their gold lame cheerleading outfits going, push it up, higher, higher. And that tells you it's all just a big joke. And it's completely disconnected from the economic activity of the United States people. Or a change in the basis points wouldn't have had that much of an effect. Now, anybody who's out there in the real world with a variable rate mortgage or credit card or car loan is going to see their payments go up because of this. We're all going to start to see the economy come apart before Donald Trump can go into office, which means they're not going to be able to say it's all his fault. The corporate media for the last month has been trumpeting, Donald Trump is inheriting a great economy. It's a wonderful economy. If something goes wrong, it's going to be his fault. Well, no. I think the Federal Reserve would have preferred not to hike the rate, but I think they just couldn't hold it down any longer. Because when they hold it down, it makes the dollar less attractive. So they're caught between a rock and a hard place. They want to keep the basis points down so that they can prop up the stock market, but then they have to raise the rates to make the dollar attractive to foreign investors and foreign traders. So they're really in a corner, and they made it themselves. They painted themselves into a corner. It's their own fault. It's not our fault. It's not your fault. I get sick and tired of all these people saying, the only thing wrong with the economy is the American people aren't spending enough money. We don't have it. It's all collected up there in the top 1% or the 1/10 of 1%. They've got it all. And if there's no way for that money to percolate back on down, to give decent wages and salaries to ordinary workers, then we've got nothing to pump back into the economy to keep it going. And that is historically the downfall of all fascist economic systems. And the money junkies can't see it. Because money junkiism is an addiction, just like heroin, just like cocaine, like meth. The addicts can't see the consequences of what they're doing. They just need that next fix. We need more of that money. We're going to pile it up in the middle of the living room, take our clothes off and roll around on it naked and have orgasms. Now, we were talking about Dallas, and their pension plan is in trouble. They've now shut off all withdrawals. The contagion has spread to Fort Worth. Their employees' pension plan is also in deep trouble. Got to do a station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Hour number 3. Our phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And before I take this phone call, I want to finish up on this story. We've been talking all this last week about how the Dallas pension plan is in serious trouble. They've got a huge shortfall. They've actually cut off people being able to withdraw their money back out of it, and that's a red warning sign. And now the contagion has spread to Fort Worth. Their pension plan is in deep trouble. Now, all of this goes back to 2008 and the mortgage-backed security fraud, which was allowed to happen when the U.S. Congress repealed the Glass-Steagall Act. And Wall Street just went on a binge of using depositors' money to play all these games. And they were bundling mortgages as investment vehicles. And because these mortgage bundles were so popular, they started playing a little fast and loose, filling them with subprime mortgages. In many cases, they were actually pledging the same mortgage over and over and over again into multiple bundles. That's felony fraud right there, for which nobody on Wall Street ever went to jail. Now, Wall Street's pet ratings agencies, Standard & Poor's and all the rest of those, rated these in bundles as AAA investments, which meant under the law, pension plans could invest in them. Pension plans, any kind of a retirement fund, they're under strict regulatory control. They have to go with absolutely safe investments. They can't take high-risk investments because they represent people who are too old to start over and rebuild their fortunes if there's an economic problem. And because these rating agencies rated these bundles AAA, pension funds invested in them all across the country. And then the fraud imploded and pensions were defunded. And nobody has the courage to stand up and say this was all the fault of Wall Street and the Congress. And they turn around and they start shortchanging the pensioners. You guys are living too long. Really, if you're loyal American citizens and you can't work anymore, you should just jump off that building over there. Stop being a burden on the system. And that's what happened. And we're seeing all across the country these pension plans are in trouble. And nobody wants to acknowledge why, which means nothing can actually be done about any of it. We're going to go to the phones here. Alan in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I didn't know if you talked about the anniversary today of the fake corporate news government hoax, the Sandy Hook.
We hadn't actually mentioned it. I had a talking point about Wolfgang Halberg, who's still being harassed and threatened over his Freedom of Information Act lawsuits. But yeah, but at this point there have been so many hoaxes and frauds by this government. I mean, trying to remember all those anniversaries is really becoming impossible.
Well, I don't know if you know, but 3 or 4 days ago, there was another bombshell about Sandy Hook that came out. I think it's from Enter the Stars on YouTube channel. But anyway, he discovered that 7 of the parents leading up to the shooting went to the White House from 2009 to 2011.
Mm-hmm.
7 of them went there. In 2010, 3 of the parents went on the same day. And, somebody's got to answer for that, I would imagine.
I think we posted that video. I think we posted that video on Monday, and apparently 2 of the parents who went to the White House are also parents whose mortgages were magically paid off and zeroed out shortly after that whole situation went down.
That's just incredible. I don't know how nobody can answer for that. It's got to. I guess more people need to know about it.
Well, I think more and more people do know about it. I think the American people are waking up. Back when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, it took almost 30 years to reach a point where half of America realized the Warren Report was a complete fiction. Today, in the age of the Internet and the independent media, the life expectancy of a government fraud can be clocked with an egg timer. And that's why they're very upset, because this elite system, this establishment, has gotten by with lies, fraud, and deception for so long, they actually don't know any other way to run a country. They can't actually become a good government. They don't know how. And that's why they're in a state of panic and out there screaming about the fake news. Germany is talking about literally passing a law saying that anybody running any kind of a news distribution system not approved by the government can go to jail. That's how afraid they are.
Yeah, well, January 20th can't come fast enough, Mike.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on that one. And even if the Electoral College appoints Trump, it's still an uphill fight. Mitch McConnell, who's a Republican, is already out there saying that he is going to fight Trump's tax plan tooth and nail. Donald Trump is probably the first president. In fact, I think Donald Trump really is a third-party president, because he certainly doesn't have the support of the Democrats, and he doesn't even really have the support of that many of the Republicans. Look how hard they worked against him during the primaries. He is such a threat to this entire narcocracy. Again, I just hope he has got really good security around him, because I got to tell you, I would not want to be the guy who's selling him a life insurance policy at this point.
I agree. Well, thank you, Mike. I just wanted to bring that up for the anniversary of that hoax.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And yes, it was a hoax, and it wasn't even particularly clever. Like the Boston bombing, they just throw these things out there, and they've been relying on the corporate media to sell the reality of the hoaxes. And now that the corporate media's credibility is destroyed, people are going back and they're looking at all this stuff. Again, to the Boston bombing, right from the beginning, I pointed out how the remains of the bomb were in a black backpack, and the photos of the Tsarnaev brothers at the scene, one was in a gray backpack and the other was in a white backpack. Now all of a sudden I'm seeing that start to come up in articles in the foreign media saying there is something weird about this Boston bombing story coming from the U.S. government. And they're right, there is. It's a fraud. It's a fake. And at this point, it's hard to find anything the government has really been honest and accurate about during my lifetime. And as far as the corporate media, they lie about everything except the sports scores and the weather, and they're not even really that good about the weather. So thank you, Alan. We're going to let you go here and do a quick shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Getting on back to the economic news, Deutsche Bank is in court over this massive rigging and fraud in the silver market, and they are saving themselves by throwing their co-conspirators to the wolves. And they're naming names of all these other financial institutions who were part of this conspiracy, and that is exactly the word to use, to defraud investors that were buying silver by rigging the prices. And these people should be going to jail. They won't, not in the United States. They'll be hit with a small wrist slap fine, which will then be passed along as higher fees and lower interest to their customers, and life will go on as it did before. Now, we've been talking about the war on cash. We're talking about how they want to get rid of the $100 bill here in the United States. We're talking about how Argentina, even though it's in major inflation, is talking about taking out their high denomination bills. We've been talking about the experiment with reducing cash in India and how it's turned into an unmitigated disaster because people who don't have money in their pockets aren't buying things at the stores. A huge part of retail trade, especially during the holiday shopping season, are impulse buys. And they put that stuff right near the checkout counter, candies, magazines, gizmos, gadgets and stuff, because you'll have an impulse. Oh, I want that. But most people walking around don't actually know what their bank balance is. And so they're not going to whip out that plastic and spend some money off that plastic at the risk of bouncing a check that's still somewhere out there in the system. And that's what they're seeing happen in India. Retail sales are plummeting, especially for those businesses that have gone fully on board cashless society and saying, we won't take cash anymore, it's plastic or nothing. And the Indian people are saying, nothing. And it's locking up the system there. And now Australia is hopping on board. They want to remove their $100 note from circulation. And they're trying to sell this as necessary to fight the war on drugs and to fight terrorism. But that's complete and utter nonsense. Because terrorists and drug dealers will find some other way to move their money around. Remember yesterday we were talking about this company that manufactures software for auditing and taxation, and a security company had found a back door through which people could trigger unauthorized transfers of funds. And instead of fixing that software problem, this company sent their lawyers after the security company saying, shut up about this. So just like governments are backdooring your routers, your modems, your computers, your smartphones and everything to spy on you, they're going to backdoor all of the financial electronic transaction systems so that they can continue to do what they're doing, only you will be kept under control. And they want to lock all of the wealth into the banks, make you dependent on the banks to handle all your commerce for you for a small fee, as well as provide total constant tracking to the government as to what you're buying. That's the real agenda here. And I resent that. It's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. And I don't want the government to know that I broke my diet and bought a jelly donut on the way home from work. It's not their business. Now, the head of IBM is getting in good with Donald Trump, is promising 25,000 new American jobs, well-paying jobs, tech-skilled, qualified jobs. So it's coming back on in. Qatar Sovereign Wealth Fund is planning a $10 billion investment in the U.S. infrastructure, which is badly, badly needed. And the liberalologists are going ballistic. Oh, my goodness, we had just gotten the American people used to living like third world serfs. And Donald Trump's going to raise their standard of living? If he does that, they're never going to go along with the New World Order and globalism. And that's another reason they're panicking about him. All right, let's take some phone calls. Bob in Las Vegas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Try to stay away from those jelly donuts. You know, plain's okay.
It was a metaphor. It was a metaphor. I mean, I have lost about 80 pounds since I went on my my weight loss program. Yeah, and now I'm starting to work out to build up my shoulders and everything like this. I got a big old sword I swing around here. Not that one. That one's falling apart, but I've got another one.
What's your program? Because I got to drop 15 pounds. I lived in California for 5 years, and I would go to this Mexican place two or three times a week, and it's still stuck on me, and I can't seem to lose any weight. So
well, basically, a big part of it is I avoid foods with monosodium glutamate because they give me a headache anyway. I stopped doing the diet drinks. It turns out if you think you're going to lose weight drinking diet drinks, you're not, because that aspartame that's in there actually stimulates your appetite. makes you crave real carbohydrates. So just getting getting away from food with all these additives and processed chemicals in there was a big part of it. A lot of salads, a lot of fruit. Claire has this wonderful recipe for coleslaw. We don't even call it that. It's Claire's slaw. And I eat a lot of that. It's full of pineapple and grapes and all the rest of it. And mostly it's just, recognizing I've had enough to eat. I'm not going to eat anymore. Again, I've lost about 80 pounds. I'm close to breaking 200. And my goal for next year, my New Year's resolution, I want to get down to 180. Because now that I'm spending more time on this side of the cameras and microphones, I had to polish up my image. And,
fantastic.
Losing the weight, and at some point I'm going to go to the tattoo parlor and I'm going to have a full body tattoo, put on me of Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Okay, well, good luck. We'll have to see that on the program. I wanted to talk about Trump, but first, you guys were talking about, you and the listeners were talking about that colloidal, can't pronounce it, that silver. I actually haven't had a cold in, it's been about 2 years, and my secret is I just have a green tea morning and night, tablespoon of honey with 2 lemons. I squeeze the lemon juice, and it's been, worked like magic.
No,
and
the vitamin C is good. The vitamin C is good, but you got to be careful about the honey. You need to get it from a health food store because most of what passes for honey at your regular supermarket isn't actually honey, especially now with the colony collapse disorder. The FDA allows food companies to cook up this sugar solution with artificial flavor and coloring and call it honey, but it doesn't have the medicinal quality that real honey does, especially the Manuka honey, which is very, very,
Manuka.
very good.
I saw that I think it's from Australia, but it's expensive though.
Yeah, but it's worth it. It's worth it. It's really very good. The green tea is very good. Mostly though, I would say that probably 60-70% of America's chronic health issues and weight gain can be undone just by avoiding those food additives. Everyone's always talking about America's obesity epidemic and crisis. Yeah. It's because of the food additives. In a world that's already beset by starvation, American food companies put chemicals in the food that make you eat more. MSG is a big part of that. MSG, which is billed as a flavor enhancer, what it actually does is it screws up the signal in the brain that says, I've had enough to eat. And manufacturers love to load up the food with it so that you will eat more, and then you have to buy more, and they make more money. Then you have the aspartame, which makes you crave carbohydrates. And then, there's all these hormones and that they're putting into the food to the chickens and the cattle to make them grow faster and bulk up. And when you eat the dairy products or the meat from these animals, any unmetabolized hormones get into your body, and your body reacts the same way to them. So you got to be really, really, really careful. And yes, you're going to spend more money to try and get food that's actually safe, but you can't trust the supermarkets. They're out for profits, and you can't even trust the government. Probably you've seen in the store the USDA certified organic. That's an actual lie. Certified organic by the USDA does not mean organic. It means there's less of the bad stuff than in the other product. There are allowable levels of things like GMO and additives under the USDA certified organic program.
Well, that's disappointing to hear because I've been going to Whole Foods and Sprouts lately, and I've been spending a premium on that USDA organic.
Well, you're definitely getting less of the harmful things with that label, but you're still being exposed. The smartest thing to do is to find your local farmer's market and just buy your produce and meat fresh from them. And you're going to get it's going to be fresher. It's going to be healthier for you. It hasn't acquired frequent flyer miles being flown or trucked from the producer to the warehouse to the distribution center to the market. And it is quite a difference, especially here in Hawaii, where everything that's in the corporate supermarkets is brought in from out of state, if not out of country.
Yeah. All right, Mike, on Trump, I've been listening to Ray McGovern today.
Yes.
He had some interviews posted on his website. And he was not a big Trump supporter, but he's very upset with the CIA, and he's basically saying this is their, to use his words, their last gasp, the whole establishment, because many of them know that they're going to lose their jobs. They potentially could go to jail if Trump gets in, and he's really afraid. He says this could be the preface to a coup, to an actual push, and it makes me think that maybe Trump was smart to select all those generals to be around him. The Mattis, the Kellys, the Flynns. Maybe that was a smart decision, looking at the situation right now.
Yeah, actually, you may very well be right, because, first of all, the coup is already underway. That's what Hillary has been trying to do. It's called a soft coup. They're trying to do a coup while making it sort of look like quasi-legal, quasi-reasonable. If that fails, they'll go to a hard coup. And that will be decided by which side the military comes down on. And you're right. Trump was very smart to get all of these top generals into his cabinet, into his administration, because that will definitely be the deciding factor. Anyway, listen.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
All right, we're going to let you go. Back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're looking at the headlines. Apparently, Georgia has mounted a new investigation about the hacking attempts into their state voter system. They have found 9 more IPs linked to the Department of Homeland Security. And the Department of Homeland Security is still taking the attitude of, All right, let's take a phone call. Ken in Arizona, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing great.
Hey, look, I heard you allude a while ago to the Sandy Hook thing. I was just wondering, were you aware that Wolfgang Halbig won a court hearing, I think either yesterday or the day before yesterday, and the judge ruled that he could go to trial?
I had not picked up on that, but that is a very, very good thing, and my advice to Wolfgang is stay out of small aircraft and out of suburban Washington, D.C. parks.
Well,
I'm not joking. You're not supposed to laugh. I'm not joking. I mean, we're in a place right now where the establishment is in a panic. They're cornered. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and everybody who's in the independent media needs to be watching their security, just like Donald Trump needs to, because I think there's going to be a lot of wet work before this is all over.
Yeah, well, I'm a producer on another show, and we won't get into that, but I just heard that, and I thought, well, are you aware of this? So he won his trial, or his preliminary hearing. They're going to trial. He is suing Lenny Posner, the father of Noah Posner, and they're going to deposition. They're going to discovery. They're going into a full-blown trial right now.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, and again, if we can stop this coup attempt by Hillary's people and we can get Trump into the White House, I think next year is going to see the decline of the corporate media propagandists and the rise of the independent media, and getting back to diversity of opinion and the American people really being truly informed so they can make good choices. That and a reformed election system, and I'll be a happy man.
Well, great. Have Wolfgang on and let him tell you about it.
I'll get back in touch with him. I've had him on the show before. I will get back in touch with him and get him on the show.
Then call him, because he's prime right now.
All right. I will definitely try and get him onto the show here. All right. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch to Francis in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, aloha.
Aloha nui.
May I get you both?
And Melika Likimaka.
Okay, now you got me.
That's Merry Christmas in Hawaiian.
Well, touche. Okay. I know you made the comment about USDA and how questionable it is and so forth ad nauseum, which is understandable considering the Department of Agriculture and ad nauseum and so forth. What can I tell you? Enough said about that. My question is this. What is your perception of what was referred to as QAI or Quality Assurance International as far as guidelines are concerned regarding organic or non-organic fruits, vegetable, and other food stock? I
have not taken a close enough look to be able to vouch for them. They could be another industry front organization. That's a very common thing for public relations firms to do, is to set up these so-called independent institutes that are actually there to push the corporate agenda. And I'll give you a classic example from advertising. There was a group that was the National Institute for Skin Cancer, and they were being cited in the news about the need for all of these sunscreens and everything because skin cancer was an epidemic. It was completely out of control. And as it turned out, this group was set up by the Coppertone Company to scare people into buying their product. And at no time did they mention, putting on a hat and maybe some kind of a cover is just as effective as the sunscreen, and you get to use it day after day after day, as opposed to sunscreen and then another bottle and then another bottle and another bottle. So that stuff gets done. And I'm not saying this group is like that, but I'm saying it's always a risk when corporate media is out there saying this organization with a very impressive scientific-sounding name is independent and they have verified what the corporations wanted to see happen. Anyway, Francis, need to let you go. Got to take
a good one.
Thanks an awful lot. Back with a phone call, then we're going to do some more news. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take another phone call, then we're going to do some news here for the rest of the show here. Ken in Georgia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, that song you just playing is great. It works right into where I was coming. Every day, the PNC, they come out with a new reason why Hillary lost the election. And I was thinking about it, I think this is the perfect avenue for you and the lovely lady Claire to make up a good song. And I'm going to give you the first lines to this song, and then I want you guys to work on it.
Yes,
sir. The
sir.
first line goes like this. On the first day of Christmas, the PNC gave to me a rooski and a pear tree. You're giving us 12 days of Christmas, man.
Yes. Well, we already have the MIDI file set up to do that one, so I'll have to put some thought into that. Claire writes the melodies. I'm more of the lyricist in this house, so we'll definitely look at that.
Come up with. Hey, Mike, you take it easy, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. Okay, getting into the world of computers, a couple of days ago we were talking about how Microsoft had issued a patch that broke the DHCP on servers all across the country, and they've rushed out a new patch to fix the last patch. And it's not like the quality and reliability of Microsoft software has ever been that great, because software companies are indemnified against product liability under U.S. law. So they don't have an incentive to actually make sure the stuff works, and before you can even install the software, you sort of have to agree to their end-user license agreement, which, to basically distill all those dozens of pages down, it says, we're not sure this is going to work, and if it doesn't, it's your fault, and you can't do anything about it. Apparently, there is a new malware that is supporting malvertising, which is getting to be a huge, out-of-control problem. This one infects routers. If this gets into your router's firmware, your router will now be serving malware onto your browsing sessions. That's going to be very, very hard to do. And this is completely new. This has nothing to do with the exploit against the Netgear routers we talked about Monday, or the other malvertising campaign discovered by ESET last week, which puts malicious code inside pixels of banner ads. Now, here's the problem with the malvertising. It's twofold. First of all, the malvertisers love to plant malware on your computer to keep you locked into whatever it is they're selling. Second of all, they're basically pirating other people's work, because the malvertisers, with these router hacks and everything, they're not actually going on out to websites and saying, I want to buy advertising on your site. They're too cheap. They're too greedy. They don't think anybody should be allowed to have money except them. And that's why they're putting out all this malware that will throw ads onto other people's websites without their permission and without sharing the money. And we get that all the time. I'm always having to field emails from people saying, there's a weird ad for something on your website. And I'll look at it and say, it's not my ad. We don't allow advertising for that particular product or service anyway. And it's been a problem even for big corporate media getting hit with all this stuff. And where is the NSA in all of this? I would like to know. All right, so let's talk about human-caused global warming. The Arctic blast is marching eastward. Record low temperatures to the northern United States. Cold weather records, all-time cold temperature records, are being broken. And it's causing all kinds of travel problems, highway congestion, accidents, cancellation of flights. It's a major, major issue. And we're still officially, technically, in autumn. Some places are seeing temperatures dropping to 30 degrees below the normal average for this time of year. Now, a story coming out of Investment Watch blog, the U.S. news media is hiding the record cold temperatures up there in Canada. They're hiding the fact that Canada's utilities are dealing with record demand for electricity to keep warm up there. What we are getting from the corporate media is, yeah, it's really cold here right now, but it doesn't matter that it's cold where you are. Up in the Arctic, it's 30 degrees above normal. If you were in the Arctic, a place where we know you can't go and check for yourself, so just take our word for it, you could walk around in your Speedos and just have a fine old time swimming in the Arctic Sea because there's no ice up there, according to Al Gore. That's their latest tactic. No matter how hard the winters get, oh, the Earth is getting warmer, but the heat is hiding someplace. Remember when they were saying that the heat was hiding at the bottom of the ocean? We had to go, hey, ever hear of something called convection? Warm water rises, cold water sinks. So now it's, you know, the Arctic air is down over our country, but rest assured the Arctic has all the warm air that it stole from the United States. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like these corporate media people, either they don't know science themselves, graduates of Common Core, or they're just hoping that you don't know science and that you're a graduate of Common Core. And you will believe, as Common Core has taught you to believe, that humans are warming the planet. And you will pay a carbon tax, slave. Another article coming out of Zero Hedge. The climate is changing back. What comes next? And basically pointing out, back in the 1990s, the world really was getting warmer. And everybody hopped on board. They took something that happens naturally, declared it a crisis, and offered to sell you all a solution. And then Mother Nature just went, pfft. And the Earth has been cooling. And they just came out, instead of saying, oh, we were wrong, the Earth is cooling, we don't need a carbon tax, they just came out with all these bizarre explanations. Oh, it's a pause. We're not getting cooler, we're not getting hotter, we're not getting, it's paused. Global warming is on a pause. The heat is hiding in the bottom of the ocean. The heat is hiding at the North Pole. And this article lists 66 different explanations about why, even as we see snow and ice falling all over us, and they got 30 inches up on the tops of the volcanoes on the Big Island, that we have to go on believing the most holy revealed dogma of human-caused global warming. I love the one where they came on out back in 2000 and said, because of human-caused global warming, snowfalls are now a thing of the past. And now we've had these record-setting winters. So now they're out there saying, well, global warming causes cold weather. Don't you understand? We have these scientists that we paid very, very well to stand there in their white laboratory coats, so you will believe them when they tell you that warming is cooling. Freedom is... or ignorance is strength, war is peace, and whatever else the rest that Orwell put in that list. That's really what it is. It's Orwellian double-think. Freezing is warming. And it's not working. I love the fact Daily Kos is out there on this story about how even though we're freezing down here in Canada and the northern United States, and it's going to be a really, really hard winter. Oh, it's really warm at the North Pole. It's warm at the North Pole. And they tried to replay the polar bear thing by showing a penguin on this little tiny piece of ice and saying the penguins are now drowning. Penguins don't live in the Arctic. They live in the Antarctic. There are no penguins at the North Pole or anywhere around the North Pole. But that's the new mascot. Drowning penguins at the North Pole. It's amazing. Now then, over at the Environmental Protection Agency, they have just released a report on the impact of fracking on the environment. And they released a draft of the report back in 2015, which they basically inserted a statement saying that they didn't find any evidence that fracking has had any widespread systemic impacts on drinking water resources in the United States. And of course, the oil and gas companies took that one sentence and went to town and said, you anti-fracking activists, see, the Environmental Protection Agency says we're not a danger to the drinking water. The finalized report, which was released yesterday, deleted that statement. They took out the statement saying that the Environmental Protection Agency found no evidence that fracking is harmful to the drinking water supply. Instead, they came on out and said there's data gaps and uncertainties, and we're not really sure. Could be, maybe not. We're not sure. So here we are, 5 years, $29 million, and their final report is, we don't know. Yep, that's government work for you. Right there. 5 years, $29 million. For $29 million, they could have built a new water system for Flint, Michigan. Probably a couple of other cities as well. Latest statistics are showing 1 out of every 6 Americans is on some form of psychiatric medication. And again, it's all about pushing product. I remember this horrific story. Came out of Great Britain. And it was when we were first starting to get on this issue about the overprescribing of antidepressants. Were they really working? Were they effective? Were they in fact harmful? It's now finally been acknowledged that the theoretical mechanism for the SSRIs does not actually work, and yet they're big sellers and they're still being put on out there. And there was this story about a perfectly normal, healthy woman was dealing with work stress, and her doctor puts her on an antidepressant, and she has a very bad reaction to it. So the doctor takes her off that medication and says, let's try another one. Instead of saying, let's just stop the medication, we'll try another one, something stronger. And she had a negative reaction to that. And it was just this nightmare story of believing and trusting the doctor and taking the pills, and her mental state deteriorated until the point where she lost her job, she lost her home, and she wound up having to be put in a mental institution, all of it caused by the medications. Because it's all about pushing product. The medical industrial complex doesn't care about your health. In fact, they need you to not be healthy. Their entire business model is for you all to be chronically sick with all these little minor ailments requiring constant palliative treatment of symptoms, but never a cure. Now, a while back, there was this horrific story of Dr. Fareed Fada, who defrauded Medicare of something like $5 million, and his patients out of considerably more than that, by telling perfectly healthy people that they had cancer so that he could sell them chemotherapy and radiation treatments from which he was getting kickbacks from the pharmaceutical industries. Because if you're prescribing a company's medications, there's all kinds of stuff that comes back. Sometimes it's overt, like on the Gardasil shot. The practitioner gets half the money of that shot. Sometimes it's a little more covert. But the pharmaceutical companies incentivize doctors to push their products, and Dr. Fada was an extreme case, but as it turns out, not the only one. Over at organicandhealthy.org, they're saying the reality is, and the National Cancer Institute did a study, and they found literally thousands of doctors and oncologists in the United States who are telling perfectly healthy people they have cancer in order to sell them more product. Now, chemotherapy is devastating to the body. So is radiation. Whatever happened to that little thing from Hippocrates about, first of all, do no harm? seems to have been changed to, first of all, do not lose money. Don't let them out of here without selling them something. It's absolutely, absolutely shameful. Now, I mentioned this earlier in the show, but I'm going to mention it again for those of you who are struggling to lose weight. This is over in the Daily Mail. And they're talking about a research project carried out at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden that was looking into whether diet drinks actually help you lose weight. And what they concluded is the same thing I have been telling you for years. Aspartame, which is found in diet soft drinks and so-called health drinks like Glasow vitamin water, is an appetite stimulant. And it does it because, like all artificial sweeteners, your body sort of recognizes it as being a sugar and tries to fit it into where it's supposed to go, but it can't fit. And so you start craving real carbohydrates. That's why the supermarkets love to bundle diet soda and chips together, because they know you're going to drink the soda with the aspartame and you're going to eat all those chips, and then you'll go back to the store for more. I mean, it is a little bit pathological. In a world where there is so much famine and starvation, U.S. companies are putting chemicals in the food that make you want to eat and drink more for higher profits. And it is this, not our lifestyle and other choices, that has created an obesity epidemic in the United States of America. Our system, our establishment is in fact totally corrupted from top to bottom. We were talking yesterday about all these articles we put out about all these mid-level officials and police and fire, and they're all being arrested for embezzling. Our nation has lost its moral compass. We've forgotten what it's like to be an American in the best sense of what that word meant when I was a child, where we didn't value ourselves based on having the latest fashion statement, wearing the correct colors. We were Americans. We were builders. We were innovators. We were altruistic. We were generous. We were merciful. We were good people. And our goodness was independent of whatever it was we had bought at the general store or the supermarket the day before. And we've lost that. Our children are literally being taught by TV, while both parents are working, that your entire self-image and esteem is based on what you buy and pour all over your head or put on your body. We have kids that kill each other to get a pair of Nike shoes because that swoosh is what says you're an important, wealthy, important human being worthy of respect. Our society de-emphasizes human characteristics like love, friendship, honesty, ethics, because you can't bottle those and sell them. We'll be right back after these few words. Hello, hi America. Welcome back to the show here, and some more news from the world of science. Up on Mars, NASA is now saying that the Curiosity rover has found more clues Mars once had microbial life. This is getting to be a repeating pattern. There's tons of evidence on Mars. You know those little blueberries that they talk about, they discovered them back with Pathfinder? The only thing that looks like those here on Earth are bacterial colonies that develop a hard shell for protection. Curiosity should have really sliced one of those open and taken a close look at it, but unfortunately, while Curiosity has a magnifier, they don't really have a powerful microscope, and that needs to go on up there. They found these algal mats, things that look like stromatolites. It's all over the place, but there's this institutional resistance to the idea that Mars had life or has life today because, again, back in 1976, Dr. Gilbert Levin's labeled release experiment returned a positive saying that microbial life existed on Mars. NASA, under political pressure, went with the negative result from the gas chromatograph mass spectrometer to declare Mars lifeless. And then it found out later the GCMS couldn't work because of the perchlorates in the Martian soil. Now, Curiosity has hit a little bit of a snag. Apparently, they drilled into a rock, and apparently the motor has jammed, and the drill is stuck in the rock, and if they can't figure out what they're going to do about it, and it's been stuck for 2 weeks now, that may basically be it. The rover is not going to rove any longer. It's just going to stay there and do what it's going to do from that one spot. I hope they get it free. Even though NASA is playing politics and spin and public relations with the data that's coming on out, it is still returning good data. But there are going to be more missions to Mars, and they're going to be looking for life, and they're going to find it. And I just don't want them to cheat Dr. Gilbert Levin of his place in history as having been the first man to prove there was life on another world, because he deserves to be remembered and not cheated. Which reminds me, I saw an interesting show. There's a great show called Mysteries at the Museum, and I like watching it. And they were talking this story about this Italian gentleman who actually built a telephone years before Alexander Graham Bell, but he didn't have enough money to patent it. And so he went to this company trying to get an investment to patent it. He left them his working model and his plans. And time went by, and time went by, and time went by, and time went by, and he went back and said, I need my plans and model back. And they said, we don't know where it went. It disappeared. We're sorry, it's just gone. And then Alexander Graham Bell came out with his telephone and his patent and became immensely wealthy. And as it turned out, Alexander Graham Bell had worked in the office of that company where this Italian gentleman had left his model and plans, and they disappeared. History very often cheats people of what they're due. I don't want to see that with Gilbert Levin. My apologies to the callers who were waiting on the line. We have run out of time. You can call in tomorrow. There's the music. Time for me to get out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. We'll be back tomorrow on the Republic Broadcasting Network. You are all part of the independent media. More important than that right now, you are part of the counter-coup against Hillary stealing the White House. I need you to get on out there and be decisively engaged against the coup plotters. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.